In 2018, the man who essentially spent his entire life writing the definitive modern manuals on absolute power control and strategy, well, he was stung by a wasp in a local park.
Yeah, just a completely random wasp sting.
Exactly. And in a split second, because of this freak medical reaction, he lost almost everything. I mean, the ability to walk, to swim, literally the ability to tie his own shoes.
It's a deeply jarring reality check, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, we spend our entire lives trying to crack the code of success, right? Trying
Yeah.
to build this impenetrable fortress of control over our careers and, our relationships. And then biology just steps in and completely rewrites the rules.
Yeah, it completely shatters that sort of storefront display we all like to put up. Because we desperately want to believe that the world operates on this visible, highly logical set of rules, like follow steps A, B, and C, and you achieve a perfectly curated, successful life.
Right, the perfect formula.
Exactly. But underneath that shiny display window is just this messy, untamed warehouse of human nature.
Which brings us to today. So, welcome back to you, our resident learner, to another deep dive. Today's source material is just a massive treasure trove.
It really is.
Yeah, we are pulling from 3 extensive hours-long interview transcripts featuring the renowned author and strategist Robert Greene. We are basically diving into his lifetime of research on the human condition.
And our mission today, for you listening, is to decode those hidden psychological currents running underneath our daily lives. We are going to completely bypass the typical sanitized cliches you hear about success.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and we're going to uncover the raw, sometimes uncomfortable truths about power, the so-called dark side of human nature, and what it actually takes to master a skill in the real world.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with this massive misconception we all seem to have about power. Because, when we hear the word power, our minds immediately jump to world domination, right?
Oh, totally. The CEO barking orders, the politician passing sweeping laws, the billionaire buying up companies.
Exactly. But the interviews argue that power is actually fundamentally misunderstood by almost everyone.
That's because true power is not about controlling the external world. It is fundamentally an internal feeling of control over yourself and your immediate environment.
Right. It's an internal state.
Yeah, it's the physical and mental sensation that you are not helpless. Think about it. The feeling of powerlessness is actually what corrupts people.
Wait, really? Powerlessness?
Yeah. When people feel like they have no agency, they become passive-aggressive, they become manipulative, they lash out. True power starts with mastering your own emotional responses first.
Right.
And there's a fascinating historical detail from the material that perfectly illustrates how we used to actually understand this concept of emotional control.
Oh, you're talking about the 18th century cafe culture? I was completely captivated by this visual.
It's incredible to think about, right? So in 18th century London and France, when people went out to a public cafe, they implicitly understood that they were putting on an actor's mask.
Like a literal performance.
Yeah, exactly. It was a deliberate social game. They put on powdered wigs, they dressed in a highly specific way, they engaged in this formalized witty banter. It was a performance, and they actually had fun with the theatricality of it.
Right, but the key is what happens after, right?
Yes. Crucially, when they went home, they took the mask off and breathed a sigh of relief. They knew they were just playing a role for the public square.
But look at how we operate today, We've completely lost that necessary distance.
Completely.
We confuse our public professional persona with our actual core identity. We have this modern obsession with, bringing our whole selves to work.
Yeah, the whole authentic self thing.
Right. Being completely transparently ourselves at all times in every setting. And when we blur those lines, it just leads to profound exhaustion and unhappiness. Because suddenly, every single minor social slight or professional critique is processed as a deeply personal attack on our soul.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Wait, I have to push back on this a little bit, though. Isn't telling people to wear a mask essentially just telling them to be fake? We live in an era that prizes authenticity above almost everything else. If you are curating a mask, aren't you just lying to the people around you?
Well, this raises an important question about what authenticity actually means in a functional social context. Being unfiltered isn't the same thing as being authentic.
Right, because my brain immediately went to an analogy here. It's like wearing a uniform to work.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, say you're a paramedic or a barista.
Yeah.
You put on the uniform. You don't think you are the uniform. It doesn't mean your entire personality is a lie, right? It's just what the job requires for you to function effectively in that specific high stakes or high traffic environment.
That is a perfect analogy. And to
Yeah.
build on that, wearing that uniform or that psychological mask allows you the power of strategic concealment.
Strategic concealment. I like that.
Yeah, because part of this public performance is learning the mechanics of concealing your immediate intentions and your raw, unedited emotions. If you just blurt out whatever's on your mind the second you feel it, you aren't showing authenticity. You are showing a complete lack of self-control.
And people pick up on that immediately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the social animal kingdom, a lack of self-control projects weakness. It tells everyone around you that your emotions are driving the car, not your intellect.
You just end up offending people, creating unnecessary friction or looking completely unhinged. You have to tailor your appearance and your words. It's a necessary psychological boundary.
Absolutely.
But that directly forces us to look at the next big piece of the puzzle. If putting on this mask is how we protect ourselves and maintain power in the boardroom or the public square, what exactly is the thing we are working so hard to conceal underneath it?
The shadow, the inherent human dark side.
The dark side.
Yeah, and we need to normalize this shadow because absolutely every single one of us has it. Traits like aggression, envy, and narcissism, they aren't these rare evil anomalies reserved for movie villains.
Right. They're not just for the bad guys.
No, they are biologically wired into our DNA from our primate ancestors. We are not descended from angels. We are descended from primates who had to survive in an incredibly brutal, unforgiving world.
The mechanics of narcissism really blew my mind here. I mean, we throw the word narcissist around as a casual insult for, anyone who takes too many selfies.
Right, everyone's a narcissist online.
Exactly. But narcissism actually begins as a vital, necessary childhood survival mechanism.
It does, and understanding how it works changes everything. So when you are an infant, you feel like the center of the universe, right?
Right.
Your parents respond to your every cry.
You're basically the boss.
Pretty much. But there comes a point, usually in the toddler years, where your parents simply cannot give you 100% of their attention anymore. They have to work, they have other children, they get tired.
It's just reality.
Right. And it is a profoundly painful psychological realization for a child to realize they are not the center of the world. So to survive that blow to their ego, the child has to literally rewire their brain to generate their own self-esteem.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they retreat inward and basically build an internal loop that says, I am worthy of love, my thoughts matter, I am a good person. That is early narcissism, and it is a healthy, necessary anchor.
So it's actually protective.
Exactly. If a child doesn't develop that, they become entirely dependent on external validation for the rest of their lives.
But the danger is when we carry that unexamined, unchecked toddler narcissism into adulthood, and it metastasizes. It turns into this aggressive, dark energy.
Yes, exactly.
And there's an incredible visual from the sources for how to handle this energy, treating it like a rider on a horse.
It's a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Your dark side, your deep aggression, your competitive drive, your raw ambition. It's a wild, incredibly powerful horse. If you just drop the reins completely and act on every aggressive impulse, that horse is going to run right off a cliff.
And destroy your career and your relationships in the process.
100%.
But the flip side is just as dangerous. I mean, if you hold the reins too tight, if you repress your ambition and pretend you are this perfectly pure person with no dark side at all, the horse rebels.
Yeah, it doesn't just go away.
No, the energy turns inward. You become miserable, passive, and paralyzed. You have to guide the horse firmly but gently. You have to take that raw, aggressive energy and channel it into your work, your art, or your causes.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see some deeply thought-provoking historical examples of this strategic control of the dark side. Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., for instance.
Yes, because we tend to view these figures purely through the lens of their saintly ideals, but they were also brilliant, calculating strategists who understood the mechanics of human friction.
Exactly. And it is important to note here, looking impartially at the historical record, regardless of the politics or the causes themselves, that this illustrates how leveraging human psychology is a universally applied tool for enacting change.
Right, it's the strategy behind the movement.
Yeah, Gandhi orchestrated the Salt March, knowing precisely how the British public would react to the visual of peaceful Indian citizens being beaten. He understood the psychology of the oppressor and the psychology of the audience.
He knew exactly what he was doing.
And Martin Luther King Jr. deliberately used young students in protests in heavily segregated places like Birmingham.
Which horrified his own advisor. I mean, they argued, quite understandably, that you cannot put children in the line of danger.
But King understood the mechanics of social pressure. He knew that the brutal images of children being attacked by police dogs and water hoses would absolutely shock the complacent American public sitting at home watching the evening news.
It's awful, but it worked.
Right. He used brilliant strategy and the inherent friction of human aggression to force a monumental social change. It demonstrates that understanding and manipulating human psychology is essential to enact systemic change, entirely independent of the profound morality of the cause itself.
It's about refusing to be naive to how the world actually works. But if power and strategy require us to maintain boundaries, wear a mask and carefully channel our aggression, how do we ever actually connect with anyone?
That's the big question.
Right, because that armor has to come off at some point, which brings us to the exact opposite of power, seduction.
Yes. While power is about maintaining control and keeping your defenses fortified, seduction, and we're talking about romantic dating, but also just deeply charming someone in a social or business setting, it's the strategic, deliberate lowering of those defenses.
Let's look at the root of the word vulnerability, because this was a huge aha moment for me.
The word vulnerable comes from the Latin word vulnus, which literally means wound.
Wow.
True vulnerability is the willingness to be wounded. It means letting someone past your heavy social fortifications, taking off the actor's mask and letting them into your heavily defended internal castle.
Which perfectly explains why we are so drawn to certain pop culture fantasies, like why is the publishing industry flooded with novels about vampires or billionaires?
It's such a funny trope, but so true.
On the surface, it sounds silly, but psychologically, it's incredibly revealing. People fantasize about vampires because they represent danger and a thrilling, complete loss of control. It's the transgressive thrill of escaping our highly regimented, politically correct, exhaustion-inducing modern lives where we have to make 1,000 safe choices every day.
And the billionaire fantasy operates on a very similar axis. It's about the ultimate comfort and security that allows you to completely let go.
You don't have to worry about the rent.
Exactly. You don't have to make decisions about the mortgage or the logistics of life. Both archetypes offer a total suspension of the mundane, everyday rules.
But returning to our actual everyday reality, let's talk about why the typical nice guy approach fails so spectacularly. Because on paper, a nice guy seems perfectly safe and vulnerable, right? Why does that strategy backfire?
What's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism of that behavior. Overly pleasing behavior, the classic nice guy routine where someone agrees with everything you say and bends over backwards, it usually reeks of deep, unaddressed insecurity.
I mean, we can sense that.
Oh, human beings have a highly evolved radar for smelling insecurity. When you are just trying to please someone, it signals that you lack an inner core, that you lack your own gravity.
It actually feels manipulative, even if the person genuinely thinks they are just being polite.
Because it is still, ultimately, entirely about them and their own anxiety. True seduction requires being completely outer-directed.
Outer-directed.
Yeah, when you meet someone, you have to find a way to turn off that frantic internal monologue, worrying about how your hair looks, or if you just said something stupid, or what question you're going to ask next. You have to become a sponge.
You have to actually listen.
Yes, you have to completely absorb the other person's reality, figure out what they're missing in their life, and reflect it back to them.
And this isn't just for dating. I mean, think about how heavily this applies to business, to negotiations, to friendships. If you are stingy, and I don't just mean with your money, but stingy with your time, your attention, your resources, your willingness to listen, it is deeply anti-seductive.
Oh, completely.
A tight, closed-off spirit ruins a business deal just as fast as it ruins a first date.
It creates friction instead of flow. But to be outer-directed, to truly absorb another person without panicking, you have to be deeply unbothered by your own insecurities.
And you cannot fake that. Microexpressions will betray fake confidence every single time.
Every time.
The only way to achieve that unshakable, outer-directed calm is by acquiring undeniable skills, which completely shatters a very popular modern myth, the myth of simply finding your passion. We are sold this lie that passion is a lightning strike of joy that just makes work feel like play.
When in reality, discovering your life's task involves enduring immense boredom and staggering tedium. The material highlights Stevie Wonder. We look at him as this miraculous child prodigy who just effortlessly channeled music. But he didn't just play with sheer passion every second of his childhood. He sat at a piano and played endless, agonizingly boring scales, hour after hour, day after day.
Because real skill isn't just a state of mind, it physically alters the biology of your brain.
Literally.
You are literalizing skill by rewiring neural pathways and myelinating the connections in your brain through thousands of hours of repetition. It's like investing in a psychological index fund. It compounds quietly, almost boringly, over time. And then suddenly, 10 years later, you are completely irreplaceable.
You are changing the physical matter of your brain through disciplined focus. But this brings up the inevitable challenge of enduring that process.
Right. How do we force ourselves through those agonizingly boring part without quitting? Doesn't too much pressure just lead to complete burnout?
It's a counterintuitive reality, but boredom is actually far deadlier to the human spirit than stress.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The human brain evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to solve complex problems under the immediate life or death threat of predators. We are quite literally wired for pressure. Without it, without barometric pressure pushing down on us, we don't relax, we just wander aimlessly.
Yeah.
We dissipate our energy.
We end up doom scrolling on our phones for 6 hours a day because there's nothing forcing us into action. You have to actively manufacture your own pressure if you want to achieve mastery.
You really do.
Thomas Edison is a wild example of this. Back in the 1870s, he deliberately called a press conference and confidently announced to the newspapers that he was going to light up the entire city of New York with the incandescent bulb in exactly 5 years.
And the crucial detail is that he didn't actually have the invention figured out yet.
He just lied.
Pretty much. His team at Menlo Park thought he had lost his mind. But he used the massive public expectation, the sheer terror of completely ruining his reputation and his career, to force his team to figure it out. The pressure literally drove the innovation.
But let me challenge that for a second. Edison had a massive lab, he had investors, he had resources. Manufacturing pressure is easy when you have a safety net. What if you have literally nothing? Does this mechanism still work when you're at the absolute bottom?
This raises an important question, and the material provides a stark example from the modern music world, 50 Cent.
Oh, yeah.
After surviving being shot multiple times, he was dropped by his record label. The industry gatekeepers thought he was simply too dangerous to market. He had absolutely nothing, no lab, no investors, no safety net.
So instead of giving up or trying to play by the industry's sanitized rules, he used that ultimate failure, that literal life or death pressure, to aggressively release raw, unedited mixtapes directly onto the streets of New York.
He bypassed the system.
He bypassed the gatekeepers entirely. He took his biggest liability, his danger, and his raw street reputation, and turned it into a massive asset precisely because he had nothing left to lose.
He harnessed the immense pressure of his environment rather than letting it crush him.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's say you've done the work. You've harnessed the dark energy of the horse, you've learned the vulnerability of seduction, you've survived the pressure, and you've built an undeniable skill. How do you actually present that skill to the world to maximize your impact?
You have to master the economics of attention.
Right. You have to master the delicate dance of absence and presence. Scarcity creates value. If you are always available, always replying instantly, always posting on social media every 5 seconds, you become background noise. You are taken for granted.
Exactly. Look at Napoleon. When he was in Paris, he artificially created an overwhelming sense of awe by only showing up to his special theater box once a month.
If he went every night, he's just another guy at the theater eating snacks. But by rationing his presence, his arrival became a monumental event. You have to give people the psychological space to actually wonder about you.
It's brilliant.
But my absolute favorite example of manipulating attention is the story about P.T. Barnum. To get people into his Manhattan Museum of Oddities, he didn't just put up a nice billboard. He hired the absolute worst, most off-key, screeching band he could find to play right outside the entrance.
It's so funny.
The music was so obnoxiously bad that pedestrians practically ran inside the museum and paid the entry fee just to escape the noise.
It's a brilliantly Machiavellian understanding of human behavior. He didn't rely on logic. He manipulated the environment by creating a jarring contradiction. People were drawn to the spectacle but repulsed by the sound, and the only resolution was to go inside.
That is wild.
And mastering that kind of psychological contradiction requires what the poet John Keats called negative capability.
How does that actually work in practice?
So negative capability is the rare ability to hold two opposing, contradictory thoughts in your mind at the exact same time without panicking and rushing to neatly resolve them.
Okay, give me an example.
Think about being in a high-stakes salary negotiation. Negative capability is the ability to sit in that room, holding the thought, I desperately need this money to pay my rent, while simultaneously holding the thought, I am completely willing to walk away from this table right now.
That is so hard to do.
It's incredibly hard. It's sitting with that immense discomfort and ambiguity without breaking your mask.
And this concept scales all the way up to how we experience the universe, which ties directly into the concept of the sublime.
Exactly. The sublime is the ultimate form of negative capability. It is an emotional experience that is a simultaneous mixture of awe and terror.
Awe and terror.
Yeah, think about standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon or looking up at the infinite starry night sky. It is breathtakingly beautiful, but it also induces a deep sense of terror because you suddenly realize how incredibly tiny and insignificant you are. You hold the awe and the terror at the same time. That is the sublime.
And bringing that massive cosmic concept right back down to earth, to the individual listener. The argument here is that to truly tap into your own power, you have to embrace the things that make you feel a little contradictory, a little isolated. You have to embrace your own weird.
We all have this profound biological desire to fit in, right? To regress to the social mean.
Nobody wants to be the outcast.
Exactly. But we're urged to lean into our mutations. In evolutionary biology, a genetic mutation is an anomaly. It's strange. But it is the exact mechanism that keeps a species alive and evolving when the environment changes. Without weird, uncomfortable mutations, a species simply dies out.
So in human culture, your strange quirks, your hyper-specific obsessions, your unconventional tastes, that is your mutation. That is your ultimate value proposition to the world. If you resolve the contradiction of your weirdness by sanding down your edges to be just like everyone else, you actually rob the world of the exact unique value you were built to provide.
If you are easily understandable and perfectly normal, you are easily replaceable. Your weirdness is your only real armor against irrelevance.
Okay, let's take a breath and recap the massive ground we've covered today.
It's been a lot.
We started by understanding the protective actor's mask we wear in public and the necessity of concealing our raw emotions. We talked about gripping the reins of our aggressive shadow self energy and channeling it strategically.
The Horseman Rider.
Right. We explored the outer-directed vulnerability required for true seduction. We looked at how building undeniable skills requires myelinating our brains through staggering boredom and manufactured pressure. And finally, we discussed wielding power through the economics of absence, mastering negative capability, and embracing your own unique mutations. So what does this all mean for you?
To truly answer that, we have to look at a final, incredibly sobering thought drawn from the very end of the material. We spend our entire lives obsessing over these frameworks, how to gain power, how to master skills, how to perfectly influence the people around us. But as we mentioned at the very beginning, in 2018, Robert Greene was stung by a wasp in a park.
A completely random, entirely unpredictable event.
Completely random. The medication he took for the sting caused his blood pressure to violently spike, which triggered a severe blood clot in his neck, leading to a massive stroke. He barely survived. It left the entire left side of his body paralyzed.
It's just terrifying.
In an instant, this man, who had dedicated his entire life to the pursuit of mastery, strategy, and control, lost the basic physical power to walk his dog, to go for a swim, or to tie his own shoes.
It's staggering to process. All that accumulated psychological power, all that deep understanding of human nature, completely humbled by a microscopic biological event in a split second.
He noted afterward that he now looks out his window at everyday people just jogging or casually walking down the street, and he realizes they have absolutely no idea the profound luxury they are experiencing. We worry so much about social power, but the ultimate powerlessness is losing your physical autonomy.
Which brings us right back to where we started. We try so hard to curate the perfect storefront display, to master the formulas of success, and to strategically navigate the messy warehouse of human psychology. But we leave you with this to mull over. You can master all the psychological laws of the universe, you can bend the rules of seduction and strategy to your will, but your ultimate power is simply the fragile, temporary ability to experience the physical world right now. Don't take it for granted.